So there we go. Thank you. I was gonna make sure we do that. How I jumped so far ahead. Sorry about that. Okay, as we go backwards here, let me see what's going on. Jump back up to the top. Okay. Just a reminder, so this is the second in a series of 3 trainings as we lead up to our Iowa Food Systems Day on the Hill, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a little bit. But I'm seeing some of this in the chat is in building off of what Tommy talked about. Folks across Iowa are concerned about a number of issues that we're working on, right? And I see this, I see Aaron there in the chat talking about the working on a community fridge, and Peg, definitely hear you. Food scarcity and food deserts in rural Iowa, right? It's a huge issue. Amber, definitely, maintaining thriving rural economies and resilient food systems. These are all issues that we've been hearing a lot, that are coming up at the state capitol a lot, and that your voice and the voice of the Iowa Food Systems Coalition is critical to informing the policymaking process. And so, again, on a wide range of issues, we know that these things are all intersectional when it comes to water quality and farm prices. The connection between our food and farm system and chronic disease, right? Iowa being a notorious right now for our cancer rates, air pollution that's contributing to that, and just the decline of our rural communities and rural economies. So that has led to this process. And like Tommy said, we entered this state legislative session that started back in January. If you were with us last week, you got filled in on that process. But just wanted to restate that our policy priorities, again, to address those critical issues and the issues that you all are putting in the chat there, is to really focus on strengthening local food markets, to support the next generation of Iowa farmers, and to invest in Iowans feeding Iowans. These are key pathways to addressing those issues that we're talking about, and to revitalizing and restoring a more resilient food and farm system. So for more information on specifically on these policy priorities, you can go to that website that Tommy mentioned before. There's lots of resources there that we'll talk about in a little bit too. So as we move forward and prepare to, Tommy dropped the link in the chat, that's perfect. As we get ready for this day on the Hill, we wanted to focus this training on how we can all be more successful advocates for a better food and farm system and for these issues that we care about. And one of the key ways that we do that as citizen lobbyists, as just grassroots Iowans, is through telling our story, right? Sharing our personal experience and how we've come to personally feel impacted by these issues. And so I'm going to turn it over to Beth, who's going to walk us through a little bit about why this is critical, and how we can be more impactful as we do this.
All right. And Adam, can you make it full screen so we're not? I don't know if you can or not. So anyway, so I've been thinking a lot about this kind of idea. Maybe that's not going to work, Adam, because it just disappeared. So you could go back. I've been thinking a lot about this sort of like why and how can we tell our stories better? Because oftentimes we kind of like have a bill or something, and then we have a story, and we're not really aligning them together, and we don't really get to tell our story fully, and we don't really understand actually why. So I wanted to frame this in the context of the hero's journey. And there's lots of great videos I could actually send after this about like how you can kind of sell anything, whether it's a bill or it's toothpaste, based on kind of this hero's journey concept. So I just wanted us to kind of think about this, and we have several slides to kind of help us through. So the basic concept of the hero's journey is that you have this hero, and you could think about this. I was just reading The Hobbit with my husband. So we're like Bilbo, right? In the beginning, he's like clueless. He's at home. He's comfortable. He doesn't really have anything going on in the world, but he's clueless about the world. So then the hero gets scared or challenged by some kind of problem. In that case of the Hobbit, it's the dragon. In our situation, it's maybe cancer or water quality, right? So that's like a problem that's presented. And the hero then in this journey meets a helpful guide. So this is an important critical part of this we'll get back to in the next slide. The hero then learns from this guide how to handle the problem. And the hero can then go battle the dragon, the water quality issue, whatever it is, with the help of the guide. The hero defeats the dragon, and the hero is then a better person, and the community is improved as well. So once they battle Smog in The Hobbit, the whole community is better. It joins all of these different groups together. Life is good. Okay, next slide, Adam. So we have the journey of the legislator is the hero, believe it or not. In some cases, we don't really view them that way, but they really are the people who have the power and have to make this journey. And oftentimes they start out clueless, but they're having to wrestle with these problems right now, right? Water quality is not something a legislator can really ignore at this point completely, or we hope that we're making this circumstance. You can no longer ignore the problem. So the legislator is then meeting this helpful guide in the form of us, the coalition. And we then are helping to guide them in how to handle the problem. And our priorities are the solutions to problems. Oh, that's much better. Thank you. Our priorities that we're listing, things like working with beginning farmers, those are answers to problems. And we kind of have to think through how that works in order to present it that way. The legislator then has to battle sometimes with the help of the coalition to kind of defeat this dragon, to defeat water quality, let's say, or cancer. And we then see the legislator then voting for what helps the community. They are changed. Our community is better. So this is like, yes, it's a little bit far-fetched to think of it as this hero's journey. But at the same time, if we are putting our stories within this paradigm, I think it might help us to figure out how to present our stories. So let's go to the next slide. So here we are, how to be the guide. So in the middle, instead of a dragon, we're the guide to how better food and farming is the solution. Like that's our goal, is to have them think about what we're doing as not like little cute local food farmers market things on the side that like some urban people do, and that's really cute. It's the solution to these bigger problems. Okay, so let's click on these because so the guide has to be able to articulate the issue. So even if you just pick one of these, and then let's go on, Adam. We have to help the legislator understand this issue, not just the facts and figures. But what we're doing with bringing our story into it is bringing the emotional aspects, because we don't tend to do things just because it's right. Like how many people have kind of battled, eating certain things, right? We don't necessarily, we know what's good for us. Sometimes we don't choose that because our emotions or our nostalgia or whatever gets in the way, and we do things that's sometimes not in our best interest. So will you click, Adam? Maybe again, I guess we need both. Fill in that bubble with the last click, I think. All right. So we have to then be able to use our story and say, I'm having this situation, which is probably articulating the problem, right? My brother has cancer, and we really think that this is tied to our water system, and bringing in the emotion of that and then illustrating how this bill, this whatever we want the legislator to do, is part of the solution to figuring this out. The other part that I really want to emphasize in all of this is that this is a journey. And if you've read The Hobbit, I've always, it was kind of incredible to think about the passage of time and like how much time it's actually taking them to do all these things. And we have to view our contact with these legislators as something we're doing over time. So your entire story, this entire thing is not going to unfold in this like 10-minute visit at the Capitol. We're going to keep in contact and continue to help to be the guide over time, even if it's just one legislator you pick to help along with this guide. All right, let's go to the next one. So how do we do that? Like I was just saying, we're here for the long game, and many of you know this very well. You've been part of this for the long game already, but change has happened, and I really want to emphasize for those people who have been working on this, the Jan Libby's, the Denise O'Brien's, the Rich Perrigs, there's so many. Where we are right now is that the public really cares about these issues. And this is a perfect moment for us to get in there and help guide people along because the legislature, I don't believe, is doing what the public really wants. So here's a possible script for when we go there. We say something like, here we are today, with the Iowa Food System Coalition. We're here to talk about food and farming. And asking them, what issues are you hearing about from your constituents? Because I'm going to bet that a lot of those align with the things that we're caring about, that people are putting into the chat. And we could also add to it, yeah, we're hearing that too. And we also know that people are really concerned about water quality. And I want to share with you a little bit about what my family is experiencing, right? So this is where your story comes into this. And then we can help them out by saying, House Bill this or whatever bill it is will help because it would do this in my community to my family. All right, let's go to the next one. And in this long journey that we're taking, we might want to write an op-ed, a letter to the editor. This is the same kind of format that we can use, right? Short stories or anecdotes. This is like a secret, that journalism, like I'm a journalist. Start looking at articles that you read. There is a very clear format that is always, almost always the way that it is presented. It's an anecdote. Starts out the whole thing. We see so-and-so experiencing this problem. We then tell a little bit about what the problem is, and then we start looking at what the solutions are or more details. You can use that same format for a really effective op-ed or letter to the editor. My family is experiencing this. This is a big problem in Iowa. Here's how we can solve that problem. And I can also help with that. You can contact me if you're looking, to write an op-ed or a letter or something like that, some little story, or you have an idea for the podcast. Those would be great. But we keep it short. And the second really important tip, which is very scary sometimes, is that the more vulnerable we are in our storytelling, the more it connects other people to us. So the stories that you hear, if people listen to The Moth or, you see this tearjerker movie, right? It's like you internalize what's happening, and that is what changes minds. All right, let's go to the next one. And I see Gil asking, what happens when there's no existing bill? Well, this kind of no existing bill that might help solve the problem. So this is what we're kind of talking about with our priorities this year with the coalition. Here's some of them here. These are things that we're hoping over years of talking about it, if all of us started being an echo chamber, that this is important in these ways and this is why, there will be more bills. So even if right now it's not, up and coming, like they're voting on it tomorrow, we're planting seeds. This is what agriculture is all about, right? We are continually planting the seeds that are going to bear the fruit. I think, Adam, were you going to do this part or am I still?
Yeah, I can jump in here, and I think Gil, exactly to your point, our last training webinar next week will dig in a lot more on what to expect, the logistics of next week, and specific resources that we'll have available about legislation that is up for consideration. Today was a big legislative deadline at the Iowa State Capitol. The first funnel, if folks know what that is, when a bill has to be out of its originating committee. So it has to have a subcommittee and voted out of that and voted out of committee to be eligible for further consideration. So we're still kind of parsing what is still up for consideration. And there's always a chance for legislative leaders to introduce bills later in the session. So there are workarounds. But like Beth said, we really want to fall back to our priorities here. And that helps us plant these seeds for long-term consideration. So a lot of the bills that we'll be talking about are going to fall into these or have connections to these key priority areas. We're really looking for legislative proposals that help us strengthen local food markets. The thinking there is, when Iowans grow food, food can grow Iowa. I know in the chat, folks were talking about, the desire for resilient rural communities and really thinking about how local and regional markets help local farmers, survive and thrive when they can sell into those local markets, whether that's produce farmers, folks raising pasture out on livestock and directly marketing that to folks in their communities. We see that economic multiplier because of the infrastructure, whether that's local processing that is needed, value added distribution, things like that. It's just a reflection of how much food we actually have to import here into Iowa. Also, I know for folks that were raising environmental issues, again, when we're really focused on strengthening these markets, those local food markets, we often see the environmental benefit of those too. Another cornerstone or policy priority is thinking about how we support the next generation of Iowa farmers. Again, whether that's rural development, it's really investing in beginning farmers to help build back our rural communities. Also, I know lots of folks, again, whether they are involved in local food production or commodity crop production, right? We are seeing more and more consolidation in the ownership of land. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen and heard that we're approaching this cliff where farmers are aging out of the job. And so as we move forward, we need to be looking at ways at how we can keep land in Iowa hands as opposed to outside ownership. The last thing I'd say is that just investing in Iowans, feeding Iowans. So really upping this ties to the markets as well, but structural opportunities to support farms and local food systems by supplying schools, food banks, hospitals, those institutional buyers that are integral in creating a long-term sustainable market for local foods producers. So
Can I
those are
just say something, Adam? I also want to just add, these are great places to then think about your story. Okay, what is my story? And we're going to go to this in a little bit where you'll have some time to think about it. Like, where does my story, my experience of the problem really fit into this? Or some of you might have, like, let's say you're selling direct to consumers and you've seen an impact in your community. That's a great story then to put into that strengthening local food markets. So you could see where we're kind of trying to match those priorities and your experience together, and be able to illustrate the problem and the solution.
That's right. We will have time for questions coming up, but I think first we wanted to just role play how this could go. We're going to do it in two ways. So Representative Hoffman and I are going to have a conversation. And first, we're going to approach the conversation like just kind of straightforward. we'll take a pause and then we'll replay the conversation in the model that we've been talking about so far today. And then we can have a little discussion about what differences you noticed and see what questions folks have. Okay, so Beth, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so I've gone through the process of pulling out Representative Hoffman. Hello, Representative Hoffman. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good. So I'm Adam Mason. I am here today with the Iowa Food Systems Coalition. We're up here just talking to folks about our food and farm system, but I wanted to check with you and just see, I know you're on the Ag Committee. So what issues have you been hearing about from your constituents in regards to ag so far this year?
Well, corn prices are really low, and I'm hearing about the cost of food in the supermarket.
Yeah, I know. I've seen those headlines a lot too. And that's why I'm here to talk to you about Senate File 2027. It's a bill to increase funding for double up food bucks. It would help address that affordability issue by getting more dollars in multiplying the impact of their dollars when they buy from local food producers. It also really just help our rural communities by passing through that money to support local farmers raising produce. Is that something that you're supportive of?
Well, I'm supportive, but we don't really have money for that.
Oh, well, I'd love to follow up with you. And again, if you could take another look at Senate File 2027, that would be great.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we'll take a pause and we're going to replay the conversation now and just see, then we can have a little discussion about what you all think is more impactful. Hello, Representative Hoffman. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So my name is Adam Mason. I'm here today with the Iowa Food Systems Coalition. We're up here, folks across the state, talking to our legislators. And I know you're on the Ag Committee, so I just wanted to take a little bit of time to meet with you. Appreciate you taking time. What are some of the issues that you've been hearing about from your constituents and, in relation to our agriculture here in Iowa?
Yeah, well, the farmers are really having a hard time with the low prices of corn and soybeans. I think we have to get that under control, and also the cost of food in the supermarket's really tough.
Yeah, it is. I live in Des Moines now, but I originally grew up just outside of Storm Lake. I grew up on an acreage in the early 80s and through the 90s. And I think back, my dad, the reason we lived on an acreage is because I think my dad really, really, probably in his heart, wanted to be a farmer. But as you know, it was the 80s, it was the farm crisis. Kind of similar today, the markets were tanking and farmers were hurting, and a lot of farmers lost their farms. And I know my dad, our family couldn't afford land at that time. Because of that, I myself never even considered farming as a career. And thinking back now, I guess I'd say it's 2020 hindsight, but that's really a shame. And I know it's something that our rural communities are facing, is just this lack of folks actually coming back and being on the farm. Is that something that you're seeing too?
Yeah, yeah. I know a lot of people in that situation, and my son would have farmed if there was more opportunity, I think.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me. The more that I'm just talking to folks about this, the more I hear that story about how, they would like to have a son or a daughter come back to the farm, and just really missing having those local farms. I mean, again, growing up there, I remember seeing 4 or 5 acreages on a section. And now if I were to go back, it's maybe one. And that's just not a good sign for our rural communities.
Yeah, I agree. It's awful.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we're working on at Iowa Food Systems Coalition is just really making sure that policy-wise, as we move forward, we're supporting beginning farmers and investing in Iowans who are feeding Iowans. We think that's a pathway to actually bring more farmers back to the farms. There's a couple bills that will probably be up for consideration this legislative session. I know there's funding for Choose Iowa, which is a great program that supports Iowa farmers. There's also Senate File 2027, which is it's $1 million investment in the Double Up Food Bucks program. I know that sounds like a lot, but it's really just a drop in the bucket of the state budget. And, if we prioritize really focusing on bringing farmers back to farms here in Iowa, I think it's something we can make a priority. So would love to keep up the conversation with you as you consider your stance on these bills.
Yeah, I'd love send me more information about double up food bucks, how you think that would help. And I'm really busy today. I've got to go to sessions, so please do send me that information.
I will absolutely do that. And thanks for your time, Representative.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to take us off share for a second and go back to the screen here. Um, so just reactions. What did folks see or hear in the way that we framed those conversations, and what stuck out to you? Feel free to go ahead and type it in the chat, or if you want to come off mute, just go for it.
I think the first thing that I recognized is that you asked the legislator to tell you what they already know about the problem. So you could begin your conversation from either that legislator being clueless, as in the hero story, or perhaps having some knowledge of the issue, and then directing your words based on what the legislator already knows.
Yeah.
I think everybody likes to kind of be asked what they think, right? Because then you get a little bit of buy-in into the conversation instead of like you're being told what you should be thinking about.
Yeah. How about someone else? What was something you heard or saw different in the two conversations? Mike? Yeah.
Yeah, just that it was very positive. I think, often, depending on your legislature, the truth might be it's more adversarial that you kind of think they're probably not. I live in Ames and I know my um, uh, Senate person and House legislator personally, and they're great people and vote often the way I like. So it's easy for me. But you might be going into somewhat of an adversarial um, position or whatever, and so approaching it in a positive way. It's obvious, I guess, but I saw that you did that. So, and I think you know, that's the only way you're going to make any progress. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. And I think you raise a really good point there in terms of thinking about some of the strategy behind approaching these. If you already have a little bit of a relationship with your legislator, you can kind of use that to your advantage as well. So if you do know that your legislator is a little bit more adversarial, for instance, this leading with your story like this can be a way to start building bridges and tear down some of that potential opposition or resistance to having the conversation. Likewise, if you know that your legislator is already on board, like they vote the right way every time, it's just a great chance to like offer your story and your experience as another resource to them as they think about, we can reframe it as how can we get more people in your caucus or on the committee voting the way that you do? Like, thank you for being right on this issue. How can we build more support? And challenging them to take action with you. It's kind of thinking about what is that dragon for that legislator in front of us. So if they're already with us, it doesn't mean they get a free pass. It means we've got more work to do to build that support.
One of the things too, when we were at the IFU Day on the Hill, is that we had legislators that were already sort of friendly with us asking about which Republicans or which other people should I be talking to? Who else should I be connecting with that I wouldn't know that would be helpful? So they don't necessarily know who's in the who's already doing this work. And also my senator, it turned out, I mean, she was like super into local food. It turned out she was like a chef. She was really super against ethanol. Like there were all these things that came out in the conversation by asking her about her thoughts and having a conversation, not just kind of telling her what we thought that came out of it. Actually, Cynthia was there. It was really an interesting conversation. Anybody else, other things?
Okay, I don't see anybody coming off mute. So what we're going to do now is actually take a little bit of time for you to practice. So I'm going to try and drop folks into a couple small groups. We're just going to take 7 or 8 minutes. And what we'd like to do is just take time with folks that you're there with to think through and kind of even start drafting your own personal script that you can use at the Capitol. Talk out your story and your connection to these priorities and how you might want to share that with a legislator. Again, if you have experience with that legislator, that's great. If not, just how you'd approach a conversation with a legislator you're meeting for the first time. So let me see if I can pull out the breakout rooms. I'm going to automatically assign 22. Let's do 5. No, let's do 6. That's okay. Yeah, this will be good. We'll give it. We're doing good on time, so we'll give it. Let's see. Yeah, about 10 minutes. Let me add a room actually and recreate. There we go. It'll be groups of 3. That's perfect. So I'm going to send you there. Again, just take a little bit of time to talk through, your own story. You don't necessarily have to role play it unless you want to, but just take time to think through how that's going to go for you. Got some time to work on that, and then we'll come back and like I said, in about 7-8 minutes.
And maybe each group will also have something to share from what you learned.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Hi, Amber. I'm Mike.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hi, Tommy.
Hey friends, how's it going?
Hi, Tommy. Good.
Good. Yeah, Mike,
So,
haven't met you either. We want to do quick intros?
Sure.
sure.
Cool. That'd be great. Yeah, you guys maybe heard my intro already.
Yeah.
I live in Grinnell. I also used to run a food hub called Grinnell Farm to Table. I grew up on a farm in Virginia. I worked on a couple farms in Iowa, that both went out of business, and that's what inspired me to start a food hub, was because they could grow all the food they wanted, but they couldn't sell it. And so trying to build the markets has been what I've been up to. So yeah, I'll pass it along.
Cool. That's a good story right there. Go ahead, Amber.
I live in Avoca, Iowa. I am a small farmer. We have pastured egg operation, chemical-free produce, and small orchard fruits. And I also work as a Main Street director for our community's Main Street program. So I work in economic rural development. And I'm really just interested in food system advocacy and changing some of our Iowa culture back to where we consume foods we can grow here more often and proudly.
Wow. So I don't have nearly the chops that either you do. I'm just a concerned citizen. For me, a life-changing book was The Omnivore's Dilemma. I grew up in Iowa and thought, well, we've always grown corn and soybeans, and always, had bad water quality. And, it's just the way it works. And maybe not quite that, but and so I'm still amazed that we, have a USDA policy that doesn't really grow healthy food and is against that our FDA policies, I think, and it's just insane to me. So and I'm concerned about water quality and about food scarcity and about healthy food and you name it, all the foods we have in the grocery store that come from, all the food miles, that contribute to climate change because we're getting food, from all over the world, but we're not growing it in Iowa. We're not feeding our people. That just seems ludicrous to me. So I don't know if I have good stories though. So maybe I can hear from you guys and use your stories because, I'm retired. I was a high school teacher, but we're doing okay. And, food prices are high. I see that, but it doesn't really affect me, you know, luckily, but yeah.
I feel like the concerned citizen voice is just as important.
Yeah.
Like if you're taking time out of your day to show up to talk about like your concerns as a citizen with like the healthy food supply chain and local farms and stuff, I think that that matters to legislators too.
It
Yeah.
definitely
Oh,
does.
yeah. I just mean I don't have a story, I think. A personal story.
Oh.
Mine are more.
I mean, I think even just saying I grew up in Iowa and like if in your lifetime you will only remember corn and soy, like I'm a generation removed, but I live on the land my dad grew up on and like my grandpa had a 3 crop rotation and always had animals on the land. Like I'm
Wow.
47, I remember that we had healthier soils in the 70s and 80s than we do now. And I understand the reason why we got where we are. I understand, you know, all the decisions that those farmers made to try to keep people on the land because it's very, very difficult to farm, but it has not helped our water quality and it has not helped our farmers either. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, Mike, I think like telling your story as a former school teacher who's now like gotten interested because you realize this is an issue that affects the state that you've committed your life to public service in, like that is just as appealing as knowing, like in my opinion, like you don't need to think that like you got to tell
Okay.
someone else's story. I
Right.
think you'll learn other people's story too, and you can point to some of those examples. But I do think
Okay.
even your story is great. Um, but
Maybe I
Amber,
have one question maybe for the two of you
yeah.
that the water quality question, because it seems to me, that we're still talking about a fairly small percentage of acres, even if we were growing a lot of food. So how would that have a significant impact on water quality? And maybe I'm not thinking about it right, but
No, it's a great. Oh, Amber, do you want to take a stab at that first? Because I have a.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you do a great job too, Tommy. I mean, I think growing food doesn't have the impact on water quality that we needed to have either way in Iowa, no matter how many acres we would increase. Honestly, the impact we need to have on water quality is going to be motivations for large row crop growers to add things like buffer strips,
yep.
grass paths, not tear out tree plantings. We need to de-incentivize things we're incentivizing that are harmful. Um, yeah,
Okay.
there's,
And
but growing
So
food would
that's
be
not a
a
good
better use of
angle
our
anyway.
water.
the way that I frame it is a little bit different, and that is more that the reason that we have crummy water quality right now is because Iowa farmers are needing to cut as many corners as they can and plant as many acres as they can to make money.
Mhm.
They don't have a choice, really. I mean, and so creating on-ramps for new markets
Uh,
allows farmers to have a choice in what they're growing. And then you can make more money growing 20 acres of food, different kinds of food, even if it's, I mean, or switching into small grains or rotational grazing. I mean, there's actually a great story. Seth Watkins from Southwest Iowa. Um, he used to farm over 4,000 acres, and now he farms under 400 acres, and he makes more money now than he did then. Um,
Awesome.
wow.
and so he switched from row crop to livestock. And so just thinking like, okay, if you're making more money per acre, you can actually take a lot of acres out of production. Like that's kind of the angle I look at it from. And it doesn't, we aren't just thinking of vegetables here. We're talking, I mean, if we were talking about like silvopasture and large
Right.
scale pasture lands, why do we do our ranching in the West? There's no water there. There's no
Right.
forage. We have
Mm.
the richest, like most of the US's ranching should be done in the Middle West, uh,
Huh.
in my opinion. But
I
it's
agree.
just that's instead we've pumped this land full of corn and soybeans and taken it out of pasture, where in reality this is the best pasture in the United States.
It
So,
is.
um, that's just a few thoughts, Mike. But
No, that's all great stuff. Thank you.
yep. I actually think it could be a really sizable land transformation if we start thinking about it in those bigger terms too,
I agree.
livestock especially. So,
My hottest agricultural take is that I think the legal definition of a farm should have to include like land and animal management, or it doesn't meet the legal definition of the term. And you can't call yourself a
Huh.
farmer either if you're not doing those things actively.
both land and animal.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, that would be a
Huh.
good one. I like
Even if
that.
it's just native pollinators, you still have to prove some kind of management structure that you're
Oh,
contributing.
that would be animals, native
Oh,
pollinators?
that's an animal, yeah.
Like bees.
No, I
But
Yeah.
agree. That's cool. Oh, I like
but
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would I get so mad when I see things labeled farm and farmer that aren't that at all.
Yeah, and then
So
and
if
then
I'm
they
just growing corn and soybeans, I'm not a farmer.
You're just a tractor driver. I don't know.
Ooh, don't say that to a
I
farmer.
know. I get rude. Don't talk to me about
I won't tell
it.
anybody. That's funny.
well, this is
That's
good. We didn't really get to talk stories much, but I think we shared a lot of valuable stuff. And
Yeah, no, this was very helpful to me. So, all right. I
both
think
of
we're getting kicked out here pretty quick.
Yeah.
both of your
All
stories
right.
are great too. So
Nice to
Yeah,
talk with
thank
you
you,
both.
Tommy.
Thank you. Mhm. Really, really, really good.
Adam, as we're coming back
Yeah.
and we have everybody's beautiful faces on the screen, I would love to get a picture of
Oh, you
everybody.
and your pictures. No, I'm just kidding.
A Zoom selfie, if you will. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, if you want to be in the picture, go ahead and come on camera. And then we're gonna do like a big smile or a goofy face or whatever you want, however you want to show up in this picture. But
Adam's can't be here. That's so
yeah, that's a bummer, Adam. I'm sorry your camera's not working. We can
We'll
like
Photoshop me in.
yeah, we'll Photoshop you in.
exactly.
Okay, everybody smile big. 3, 2, 1. Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll turn it back over to the organizers.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So, like Beth said before we broke out, we'd just love to hear from folks. I know there were 6 rooms, so I just want to popcorn out. How did that feel, or did were you able to kind of talk through and connect to those priorities? Don't be shy.
Far from shy over here. Just evil. No, I have a hard time with refraining myself, and we were talking about the local foods, the funding being cut in schools. So but it was hard to refrain from saying a lot. So it takes practice.
I think it's not like having to refrain yourself. I think it's like because talking about things, we kind of talked about this in our group. Talking about things in sort of an abstract, like, oh, funding was cut and it's so terrible and local food's so important. It's not, we want to get down to that, like, why do I care about this, right? It's like, why does this impact me? Why am I riled up about it, right? And it's the more we can get to that like personal story and emotion, the better. So like we started out talking kind of abstractly about nutrition and schools, and we really cared about that, and then it kind of all of a sudden went to, and Carla, can I share about this? Is this okay? Okay. She said, well, there's this other part of it is like my sister is taking over our family's farm, and my sister is alone. She's a woman. She's taking over this farm, and there's feels like there's very little support for her. That, and we can all like when you hear that story as opposed to like this general talk, it lands on us differently than just the abstract. So that's what I'd like you all to kind of be thinking about is like my personal story, where is it in this, and then how do I relate it to these topics? So Carla, kind of when we talked about it, maybe she's going to not talk about this specific thing when she goes, but like telling that story to a legislator brings it down to earth. It like grounds the whole thing. And then she can say, this is why I'm so interested. And next week we're going to talk about all the specific bills. So I'm sorry I don't have all the information, but like this is why the Choose Iowa program and funding for Choose Iowa is so important, because that will help support my sister on the farm and people like her, right? You can just feel how that kind of story is so different. So, yeah, kind of talking about or finding our story and which part is most relatable. Like, how do we relate to each other as human beings? All right,
Okay.
other people.
I just realized there's 2 Carlas here.
Oh, there are.
Even more impressive, they're both spelled with the K.
Oh, that is impressive because I don't meet a lot of Ks. I do not meet a lot of Carlos with Ks. So I don't want to go into like the stories of what everybody was saying. There was something that was said right before we were transitioned out of the break rooms, which was a problem or something that seems to happen is for lobby days, it becomes kind of difficult to even talk to them because they're in voting, they're in session, they're that's something that I kind of noticed yesterday. There's been times where I've been, support independent contractor working on lobby days and just observing, what's all happening for the people who are directly lobbying. And there has been times where I noticed people were able to, get in and have conversations. Yesterday, someone maybe could say differently, but yesterday what I observed was it was just hard to just get them to come out. So that's something that I wanted to bring up because another person had said it, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of something I noticed yesterday.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating, I would say, especially when you don't, so just when you put in and then nobody's coming out, can be a really frustrating experience. And I would say that that's why this like long term contacting them in the off season, bringing them to your farm, talking to them about your family, all of that kind of stuff. So even if this story isn't today, isn't on the day of the hill that one specific time, this, like I was saying, your story is valuable for an op-ed piece. It's valuable for your local paper. It's valuable for contacting them, writing letters to them, so just it's like a skill that I hope you'll use in many different ways. But I hear you. It's enormously frustrating.
And I think the folks from the Iowa Food Systems Coalition will try and make it as accessible as possible in terms of trying, we're making sure that legislators will know that we're coming in advance and asking legislators to kind of announce to each other from the floor that we'll be there for our day on the Hill. Likewise, I think, folks, some of the staff folks from organizations that are members of Iowa Food Systems Coalition, we've got some tricks too, so we can, put somebody in the balcony and just keep an eye on who's actually in the chamber if we need to. We'll come up with some ideas about how we can try and make it as accessible and productive as possible. So, want to hear from one more person how their breakout group went. Yeah, Amy.
I was just going to say that in the past, when I've done some like calling or emailing, oftentimes I've like used a script, and I think same when I was at the Iowa Farmers Union Day on the Hill, there was the like priority little pamphlets that you could hand out, and those were helpful to start with. But I think that something that kind of came up in my conversation with Tabitha today was that it's like a little intimidating if you don't do it a lot to reach out to folks, because you're like, oh, they're like powerful people, and like, what if they don't want to talk to me, or what if I don't know exactly what I should say? And so like those things were helpful to get started, but like then you just kind of are sounding a little bit robotic, or like you don't really believe in it. And so I felt like it was really helpful for me to go to like a day on the Hill where it was like all these other people were there too, and that I could kind of like listen a little bit more than I was talking, and like use those pamphlets and things as sort of a guide, but then kind of like increase my courage to be able to, it's just like, oh, this is just like talking to people. These are just conversations with people, other Iowans, and I can have a conversation with them and share my story. And like the tool, the script then becomes like sort of a reminder or jumping off point of like the important pieces you want to touch on, but then you don't have to like rely on it so heavily and feel like so stiff or like, I don't know what I'm doing here. It's just like, oh, I'm just talking to somebody.
That's great. And yeah, they work for us. We have to really be keeping that in our mind. Like these people are working for us, and they deserve to know what we think. It's probably very hard to do your job and not have any input. When I asked my senator what she was hearing from constituents, she actually said nothing, because my last administrative helper set up an inbox that everything that was related to bills and things was put in a separate folder that I never knew existed. And so I never got any input from anybody. And I was like, wait a minute. So it's like, first of all, you have to be able to say to them, oh, no, I've been emailing you, you need to check your inbox, whatever the case may be. That's a very extreme example. But like a lot of them don't have a lot of different people, right? You have like your friends but you probably want to hear from people who are farming or people who are working in this. And so we have to think of ourselves as the guide, the really helpful guide that they need to have as part of their legislative journey.
That's the perfect segue. So that just kind of to recap what we've covered today is absolutely continue to be that guide. It's forging these relationships one conversation at a time that help us create the echo chamber and continue to make progress on the issues that we care about. So just a quick reminder is, as you're thinking about your personal story, your experience that you want to share, make sure that we're remembering to keep to let them know you're a constituent, making it personal. We talked, I think, Mike, you recognize this, and like keeping it friendly almost, keeping it concise, and then when possible, we're making an ask. Also, using our stories to tell our friends and family so that we make the choir even bigger. We want more folks joining our work, joining our movement. And another great way to do that is through earned media. So using your story to inform a letter to the editor or an op-ed. And again, Beth or I or other folks are more than willing to work with you on that. And then using social media to get that story out as well. You are the expert on this issue. Your experience is your experience, and no one can argue with that, right? It's your lived experience, and sharing that with folks really helps forge those connections. As a reminder, next week is the last training in this series. So Paige and Cynthia will be leading that, where we dig in on the specific logistics and what to actually expect at the Iowa Food Systems Day on the Hill. So next Friday, February 27th, same time, same place, will be the last training in the series. And then, then it's our Day on the Hill, Wednesday, March 18th. So make sure and mark your calendars. You can scan that QR code there if you need that real quick. Or you can also find this online, obviously. So in closing, just again, feel free to reach out to Beth, myself, to Tommy. And you can find more resources online at iowafoodsystemcoalition.org, specifically if you're looking for advocacy resources at that link there. So I want to thank you all for taking time today to join us, and look forward to seeing you next week and at the Capitol on March 18th.
Yes, thank you for coming. If you have questions, please get in touch.
Thank you. This was really helpful.
Thanks.